My name's Ken Clay. I'm British, so I live in London, but I'm originally from a city called Newcastle, which is in the northeast of England, quite close to the Scottish border.
Okay. Yeah. And thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me. I think we've spoken a few times, and the first time I think was with a group with Peru, and I was so surprised the next week when you were going to be speaking with me again with Lila. I was like, wow, this is like, you think this whole internet is this big, huge amount of people, and then okay, there's the same Ken Clay. I was so happy to see you again. So
Yes, it is. I mean, I think it's kind of quite incestuous between one group and another group, and you seem to find. I certainly find that it's the same native English speakers who tend to float around three or four
right.
of the major WhatsApp groups and organize chats and what have you. So I try and get involved. So I think that's how that has happened. Yeah, I mean, the internet is a great thing, though, isn't it? It does allow us to kind of get to know each other from different countries and cultures.
Right. Yeah, and I was like really happy because most of the time I've been speaking to a lot of people from India and then South America because I'm trying to learn Spanish, but I have not had any conversations with anybody from UK, so that was pretty exciting to me because I think it's super interesting. For me, I actually love. I don't watch a lot of television now, but I love British comedy. Monty Python, Faulty Towers, Mr. Bean, like those are the shows that I absolutely love. And movies, books. I think when you were talking about Derbyshire, I was like, oh yeah, I know that from Mr. Darcy. He had his home in Derbyshire, and then you were mentioning that was when we were having the conversation with the people from Peru. I think there was other places in Brighton. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They went to Brighton. Like I was thinking of the book because I've read it so many times. So I feel like I've never been to England except to stop over quickly as I was going to Finland. So I never really been there, just to the airport. But I feel like I've been
Yeah.
to Britain through the books and through television, right? So I'm very interested in someday. That's definitely on my list of a place to go.
I think we all have this thing because of television, because of cinema, that we see we see other cultures and other countries, and we think we've got an idea as to what they're like. I have a Japanese wife, and the first time I went to Japan, despite the fact that I've been watching stuff about Japan, and I kind of thought I knew it, and you get there and you suddenly go, "Oh, this is not quite what I was expecting." This is, it is a massive, or it can be a massive culture shock, because you think by watching TV, by watching films and what have you, that you understand the country and the culture. And given the fact, we share a common past, and obviously we share the same language, we should, or you should, or I should have a greater understanding as to America. But having been out there, it still always surprises me. And walking around or driving around, it is still a bit of a shock. It's like, oh God, yeah, this is not. This is, this is what I see in the films when I'm watching
Yeah,
American
exactly.
films or
It's
American
a
TV.
very narrow view, and I think, well, like the difference, like, okay, obviously people that first came here, especially here to Massachusetts, were people mainly from Britain, but you have people from all over the world, and the people that came to the United States were the people that were more of the rebels and more the people that wanted to leave behind. So I think the ancestors, like, or no, the predecessors, right? So my ancestors were the rebels that were leaving all these countries, or the people that just were the adventurous type. So I think and I've read a lot of this, I don't know, it's a theory anyway, that we are going to have more of a type of people here that are, I don't know, maybe like more people to take chances, or more people that are, even like with people that have ADHD, that like there's more prevalence of that, because maybe those were the people that were like itching for different things in the world. So I don't know. It's a theory I've read about, and maybe it's true.
Well, certainly, I'd have to agree with the more adventurous, I think, or I suppose in some respects there was a lot of persecution back sort of 300-400 years ago, and people were fleeing either
Right.
probably invariably religious persecution of one sort or another. But you still have to be fairly adventurous or fairly desperate, whichever, to
Absolutely.
leave and to upset and to go on a very perilous journey to another country. I mean, obviously, traveling today is incredibly safe, but in those days, it would have been incredibly perilous. And to not know what you were going to arrive into, at
Yeah.
least today, you know, because of television, because of radio, the internet, we kind of have an idea as what we're going to arrive into. We kind of think, yeah, well, I know what America's like, I know what
Right.
Russia's like, I know what the UK is like, or France. But in those days,
They had no
you had
idea.
no idea. You were just moving into a massive unknown new life. So yeah, I think you'd have to be really kind of adventurous to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be. I don't think I could be.
Yeah, I don't think I could have been, and even now I'm not as adventurous. Like I sometimes think that maybe like when my kids get, when they finish college, maybe I'll like move to like South America or Costa Rica or something. But then I still think, oh, I'm comfortable and I know everyone and I'm comfortable where I am. So it's just this thought, but I don't know, like, do I have that adventure? I think that even, I've had lots of friends that come from other countries. Like you have to have that adventurous or that desire just because things are so bad where you are, or you have that adventure to leave everything, the language and everything that's comfortable and go someplace else.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I because of my job, I've travelled quite extensively, and in terms of going on holiday, I've always just kind of got a plane somewhere, got out the plane, and just gone. So I'm quite adventurous in that respect. I've done Latin America, I've done Cuba, I've done quite a lot of Europe, just literally just traveling around, getting off the plane. So I'm kind of quite happy about doing that. It doesn't worry me too much, but in these days of English being a fairly international language, it does mean that you can kind of quite often get around and get by and not worry about not eating and not finding somewhere to stay the night. So, but yeah, I consider myself fairly adventurous, but I think that is the advantage of being sort of 300 years further in the future.
Yeah.
And knowing roughly what I'm going into. So, yeah. And traveling's great. I mean, it's a fantastic way of seeing other people and other cultures and really getting a grasp of either how good your own country is or how bad your own country is in terms of, what it provides or what it doesn't provide, or what your people are like in comparison to, people from other countries. So
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't traveled anywhere near as much as you have, but I'm fairly adventurous. So I a few years back, I think it's like 5 years ago, I went on this site called penpal.com, and I started to exchange messages with somebody from Mexico, and then we started practicing via video chat. And I would, like, every week I would practice. I got to know her children, her husband, and everything. And she invited me to Mexico, and I decided to go. And my friends and family thought I was crazy. Like, you're going to go there? You're going to be kidnapped? You don't know these people? Like, I feel like I know them. Like, I talk with the children, I talk with the husband, I talk with the mother. So I went, and it was great. It was fine. At first, went to Acapulco, which my son told me was one of the most dangerous cities in the world. But I didn't see any danger when I was there, and I felt like the family kept me safe. I stayed with the family. And I did do a little bit of exploring, but mostly I stayed with the family. And then I went to Mexico City with them. And again, I stayed with the family most of the time. But there was one point when we were in Mexico City, and it was just after New Year's, and there was like an ice skating rink outside, and they wanted to do that, but I couldn't go because I was wearing a long skirt. They said, no, you can't go. So I said, I'll just explore around here, and I'll meet you back in an hour. Well, I was exploring, and then I went down a side street, and I came out, and I went the wrong way. And so I did have ability to call them and everything. And I'm trying to find my way back, and I'm trying to speak in Spanish to people and ask them directions. And the mother called me, said, where are you? I'm like, I'm a little lost, but it's okay. So I was asking people, and I was getting a little confused. And I was told them I said, I need to find my way back to the museum. I think I thought it was the Mayan Museum, but it was the Aztec Museum. Whatever it was, I said it wrong. And then I finally decided to go. And one thing that was a culture shock to me is that there were all these people, these military people with big, huge machine guns, because we don't have that in the United States. Like, that's just not a common thing. But they're like in the streets guarding everything. So I finally decided to only ask them, because the people, just this plain people on the street, they were just like confusing me. So I would go in my Spanish that wasn't the greatest at the time, and I finally was able to get back to the mother that I was staying with and stuff. But that's like the adventure. Like, I decided to go stay with a family that I only met online. So I thought that was pretty adventurous of myself.
Well, I mean, I think that's the great thing, is that being with a family gives you a real understanding as to real people. You're not in a hotel, so you're not isolated from the real world. You're interacting in a real way with real Mexicans or whatever they might be, because you are with a family. I think a great way of doing it. And I went to Cuba. We were in Cuba just before lockdown, and we stayed in people's houses, which again was great, just in terms of really getting an understanding as to what life was like in that country and what the culture was like. And I think you benefit more from that. And obviously, because you already had a relationship, a rapport with family, I think that would have, I suspect that worked to your advantage, because you're not just going to a hotel, going to a tourist complex, getting on a tourist excursion to a tourist destination, and all you see is touristy things. You're not really getting a flavor of what a country is actually like, for the way that the locals actually live, and in the area that they live. So yeah,
I mean, I think I agree. I mean, I totally like was immersed, and they showed me like oh, you need to try this, you need to try, like there was all this, like she would say that I need to probar, like, because I think in Spanish that's the word for try. I'm like, you need to, but she would say it in English, you need to prove this. I'm like, yeah, I think you mean try. So in any case, like she was practicing, her and her family were practicing English, and I was practicing Spanish, but I was eating and trying everything. And in Acapulco, there was all kinds of, like, a lot of fish things, a lot of octopus. And I basically, like, she brought me, like, in Acapulco, there were like 8 different beaches, but only one museum. And I went to all 8 beaches and the one museum. And Mexico apparently has the second highest amount of museums in the world, outside of Paris, I think. I didn't go to all of them because I only had 4 days, but she showed me as much as she could. So it was just wonderful. I haven't gone back. I do want to, and I have lots of places that I want to go. And before the lockdown, my plan was go to Spain, but again, that hasn't happened, and I haven't had the chance to yet.
Yeah, in terms of learning, if improving your Spanish, I love Spain, because I've lived out there and been out there quite regularly. So amazing place, great culture, great food, great nightlife in terms of during the summer when it's very warm. Just everybody's out on the streets and the terrazas eating. Obviously, with COVID, things are a little weird at the moment.
Yeah.
Looking at their news, but absolutely would recommend going to Spain. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Do you kind of, is there anywhere particular in Spain you'd like to visit?
There was this place, and I can't remember the name, but it is like on the coast towards the Mediterranean, and there's like cliffs, and there's like this place where there's some of the original cave paintings. I can't remember.
Right.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but that was one place that was like, I saw this video of it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. This place, like, it's like unbelievable. And I have to look up what the name of that was. But I mean, I watch podcasts and kind of feel like, again, like I know the place, but I don't know the place, of lots of different places around Spain. One of my favorite podcasters, and maybe you're familiar because you seem to be interested in Spanish, is Luisito Comunica. I'm not sure if you heard of him, but he's from Mexico, and he goes everywhere. He goes everywhere. Like right now he's in Finland, which I've been to Finland. I have family from, and he just went to where my family in Finland said Santa Claus really is from Finland. He lives in Finland, and that's where he was. He just made a video, and he went to go see Santa Claus in Finland. But the great thing about Lucido is, like, and strangely enough, this Santa Claus, of course, he knew a little bit of Spanish, but he mostly spoke to Lucido in English, and Lucido spoke back to him in English. So whenever he travels anywhere, he could be in Pakistan, he could be wherever, he's usually speaking to the natives in English, because most of them aren't going to know Spanish. but I feel like I get to know things or go places that I would never go because, quite frankly, some
Yeah.
places he goes I think are dangerous that I wouldn't go. But I get to kind of see them firsthand, and he goes and he's always like, with the native, whoever lives there, and really getting to know. Like he was just in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, I think it is. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but he just
Kyrgyzstan, yeah, because I think, yeah, because you got Pakistan, then you got several of the other Stan
there's a
countries, which,
stance. Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I
yeah.
think that means something like it's a flatlands or something. I'm not sure, but it stands
Oh,
for
okay.
something. Because my children's father told me that it means something to do with the way that their land is, and whether it's like a flatlands or the land of the farmland. I'm not exactly sure, but that's why all of those countries have that stand in them.
Okay, okay, right. I was in Uzbekistan a couple of years ago. Lovely place,
Yeah.
really nice, fantastic people. Um, just very, I mean, again, just one of those places where you kind of sit there and you think, whoa, where am I and how did I get here? Because
Yeah.
it's, yeah, kind of really great. I did enjoy it, and the people were lovely, and the architecture was amazing, and you just think, and super underpopulated for the size of the actual size of the country. It had a tiny population, like just a few million.
Yeah.
And I look at Britain, which is a population of 56 million, and it's a small island. Oh, sorry, 65 million. It's a small island, and just this huge space where you see nobody for a day, and you keep driving, and you think, well, I haven't seen another car. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, mini culture shock because you just don't see another car, and you drive all day, and you think, wow, you couldn't drive for 5 minutes in the UK without seeing another car. So yeah,
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. He goes to these places, and some places he goes to, there's like no English. Like some places he goes to, and the signs are in Japanese and they're in English, and he goes to this other place. But some places he goes to, and they're only in whatever. I think it was Pakistan,
yeah.
where that's it. There's no English. Like if you don't know the language or you don't have a guide, you're not going to get by. You're not going to be able to read, oh, this way to here. So it's interesting to me. Like again, English being international language, but it's not everywhere. Like so.
No, I mean, again, I mean, with having a Japanese wife, I've been to Japan several times, and once you kind of get out of Tokyo, and even in Tokyo, it's still very, very difficult. I've actually found myself speaking Spanish more times with people in Japan. Apparently, there are more flamenco schools in Japan than there are in Spain.
Wow.
Weird fact. So if I have spoken to people in Spanish, it's normally been women because they've learned flamenco, and as a consequence, they've then picked up the language and decided to learn Spanish. So, but yeah, I mean, even in Japan, even in Tokyo, you'd struggle to find people who would speak English well enough to kind of get by. A lot of the signs are in English. That happened a few years ago when they had one of the World Football Championships.
Oh, right.
And obviously, with the Olympics and what have you having happened, I don't know whether they ramped that up in terms of signage, but obviously it didn't really happen as an international event. But certainly their bullet trains and their major transport systems, everything is in Japanese and in English. So, because I mean, there are, talking about Finland, you go to Finland, you go to Denmark, you go to Norway, Sweden, they speak English as well as we do.
Oh, yes.
And that is the shocking thing. I mean, literally as well as we do. And you kind of go, if not better.
Exactly.
This is the frightening thing, if not better. Some countries obviously a lot better in terms of their uptake of English, and some aren't. But I think that's down to not so much culture, but if you don't have a country which has a fantastic educational system, English on the curriculum is not going to be very high up.
Right.
Whereas if you've got a country like Finland or Sweden or Denmark, their education systems are fantastic, and they understand that nobody's going to learn their language. This was told to me by a Swede. He said, "Who the hell wants to learn Swedish?"
Exactly.
He said, "If I want to speak to somebody from Finland, I'm actually going to do it in English." And I went, "Really?" He said, "Yep, because we all use English to communicate with our neighbours." He said, we rarely would use our own language because it's just far enough off that it gives problems where English is international. So
right.
one of the things you find on a lot of these forums is just all the people from around the world, every corner of the globe, if a globe can have corners, of course, because it doesn't, are learning English. And it's just super useful for both yourself and myself if we ever go traveling. Is that somewhere along the line, fingers crossed, you will find somebody who has English to a level which will help you out.
Yeah.
That is fortuitous, and the internet has been a fantastic tool for a lot of people in terms of, you were talking in the introduction, Leela. When I first met Leela 2 years ago, he was incomprehensible. I just couldn't understand him. And you look at him now, and you think, wow. And he's done most of that through the internet, through just really using the internet to its advantage and to his advantage in terms of language learning, getting on chats, researching things, reading things, listening to podcasts, YouTube. And he's a perfect example of somebody who's gone from zero to hero in 2 years in terms of his English. I still got work to do, but my God,
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
And I see that so much. I think it's awesome that all the tools on the internet that is to their disposal. But I think also with people like Lila, or is it Lila? I'm not sure if I'm saying his name wrong. But in any case, the fact that I think they also had more than one language growing up, like in the home, so already their mind is wired. Because I'm so amazed when I speak to people from India that say, like, I'll have a conversation with them and they've only been learning English for like 3 months, and I'm having a pretty good conversation with them. And I'm like, how is that possible? It's almost unbelievable, but I think it's because they've always spoke like at least 2 languages since a young child, because it's a multilingual country that they have, right? And probably English was somewhat taught in the schools, but not to the point like they really were seriously studying it for 3 months before they spoke to me. But then I'll speak to someone else. Like I just had a conversation with somebody from Colombia and I couldn't understand him. And I said to him at the end, I said, I think we need to redo this maybe in 6 months, but I cannot post this conversation because I can't understand you, and I think you wouldn't want this to be posted. So I said, I think you're doing good, but you need to like work on it. But there's other people that I'll speak to, and I'm just amazed when I say how long you've been studying the language, because I've been studying Spanish for since I was a teenager. Again, it was probably not taught well in high school and college, but seriously studying it for 5 years, but studying it for probably more than 20 years altogether. But other people are studying a language for 3 months, and they can have a conversation about a topic, not just like, hi, how are you, but like to get into a good conversation. There's someone else that I've had many conversations, Anand, he's from English Finglish. And I think that, you've probably seen him. I know he's had a conversation with Lila. I was very amazed with him because not only has he learned English in a very short time, but he also went from like 0 to like 50,000 subscribers in like a year. So when I started doing this YouTube thing, one of the things that my boss, because I work in a school, YouTube's not my full-time thing, believe it or not. I work in a high school and I work with students in their last years to do college, but we do summer programs. So my boss said, okay, we're in COVID. Why don't you do a YouTube camp? So I did the YouTube camp. I'm actually hopefully going to be presenting in it in Washington, D.C. at our national conference. So I'm putting a proposal for that. But I actually asked Anand to speak to my students as like, hey, you're a YouTuber that went from 0 to 50,000. Now he's at like 70,000 subscribers in less than a year. And in addition, he was also one of these people that basically learned English in a very short time. And I have really rich conversations about education, about the environment. Like he's very knowledgeable and able to speak on all these things. And he's really only been speaking English for probably less than a year and a half, like really, really studying and speaking it. So.
I do kind of, when I sit in on chats and on classes, which I quite often do, I was on just taking a break from something. I was on a chat yesterday about phrasal verbs. I'm just sitting there going, yep, English isn't that easy. It's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And you look at Spanish, a much more logical kind of language in terms of verb structures and what have you. Then you come to English and you go, I quite often refer to it as a dog's dinner. It is a dog's dinner of a language. It's a complete mess. It works. it does what it needs to do. And obviously, partially because of the British Empire initially, and then the American influence, television, cinema, it has obviously gained world dominance as a language. And yeah, we've got to be thankful for that.
I tried to help out with this other group from Peru, and they would be like going through this phrasal verb thing, and there was like 4 verbs in a row, and they're like, can you explain this? And I can't. I'm like, I really can't explain. I can just tell you that one sounds right, that one sounds wrong. Like there's like I'm not processing, and I'm not thinking, oh, that's a phrasal verb or helping verbs or auxiliary verbs. I'm like, I don't even know what they mean. At one time I think we studied them
that's 2 of us,
right? In I think in high school or something, they made us do this thing called like sentence diagram, and we had to point to like what was the helping verb and the pronouns and all this stuff. But I don't use that, and I don't think like that when I'm speaking to people. So
I mean, when I was at school, there were still dinosaurs on the earth, so I can't remember that far back. I can't remember what happened at school. So I think, for me, when I see people like Lila kind of pick up English and just really kind of get to the point where having a decent conversation about anything is, he can do that, and other people. And then I try and analyze English myself when I'm in these chat groups, and I kind of think, I've got no idea about my own language. I haven't a clue. But I'm kind of happy that when I'm in these chats that I'm kind of giving back in some respects, because so many people have given to me in terms of my Spanish learning process, that it costs me nothing to sit down for half an hour and have a chat with a load of people. And a bit like yourself in terms of your channel, you don't kind of quite know how much it gives to these people until you see the progress that they've made over that period of time. It's myself, yourself, and lots of other people, and they're using all of these resources. And being native is something which I think really helps, because for me, I know listening to native Spanish speakers, you suddenly go, that's how a native uses the language, and not the way it's taught in books.
Absolutely.
And I think it's fantastic that you, with your channel, are helping other people in terms of, being able to bring this stuff back up, going to YouTube, watch it again and again and again, and obviously doing these kinds of chats either with non-native speakers about all kinds of subjects is just a great resource for those learning English. Fantastic. So I'm saying keep up the good work in terms of having chats with people, because I think it really works for English learners.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate your time, and hope that when it's rainy and you can't go out on your shoots, that you might have some time to have some future conversations.
Absolutely, would love to, because I think one, it's just great talking, and as I always say, I can talk for England. If there was an Olympic talking team, I would be the captain of that team, because I can talk the hind legs off a donkey. So
all right, well, thank you.
No, thank you very much, and take care, and thanks again for the chat.
All right, thank you so much.